After saving two Arapaho sisters, the lonely rancher woke to their mother's unbelievable request. The rifle shot echoed across the canyon before Jake Carter even saw the riders. He dropped flat behind the boulder, his horse whinnying in panic 20 yards back. 3 more shots cracked through the air, and he heard screaming. Women's voices, high and terrified. Jake crawled forward, peering over the rock. 4 men on horseback had cornered 2 Arapaho girls against a cliff face. The younger one couldn't have been more than 15, the older maybe 20. Their horses were gone, probably scattered by the gunfire. One of the men was laughing, a sound that made Jake's blood run cold. He didn't think. His Winchester came up smooth, and he put a bullet in the dirt between the lead rider's horse. The animal reared, throwing its rider hard. The other 3 spun around, reaching for their guns. Jake fired again, this time taking the hat clean off the second man. That got their attention. They understood now that whoever was shooting could have killed them already if that was the plan. "Ride out," Jake called from behind the boulder. "Right now." The man who'd been thrown scrambled to his feet. "This ain't your business, friend. I'm making it my business." Jake worked a lever action, the sound carrying clear in the desert air. "You got 3 seconds." They must have seen something in the situation they didn't like, because the leader cursed and swung back into his saddle. 4 of them spurred their horses south, disappearing into the maze of rocks and scrub brush. Jake waited until the dust settled before he stood. The 2 girls were pressed against the cliff, watching him with wide, frightened eyes. The older one had a knife in her hand, small but sharp. She was ready to fight if she had to. Jake lowered his rifle, keeping his hands visible. "You're safe now. They're gone." The older girl said something in Arapaho, quick and urgent. Her sister responded, but neither of them moved. "My ranch is 2 miles north," Jake said slowly, pointing. "You need water? Food?" The older one studied him for a long moment. Her dress was torn at the shoulder, and there was a cut on her cheek that was bleeding. Finally, she nodded once. Jake whistled for his horse. The gelding trotted over, still nervous from the gunfire. He pulled his canteen and offered it to them. The younger girl took it gratefully, drinking deep before passing it to her sister. "I'm Jake Carter," he said. "What are your names?" The older girl wiped her mouth. "I am Nina. This is my sister, Emma." Her English was careful but clear. "Those men, they will come back." Jake checked his rifle, making sure it was fully loaded. "Then we better get moving." They rode double on Jake's horse, Nina behind him and Emma clinging to her sister. The gelding didn't like the extra weight, but it managed. Jake kept scanning the horizon, looking for dust clouds or the glint of sun on metal. Those men had the look of trouble that didn't quit easy. His ranch came into view as they crested the final hill. It wasn't much, just a small cabin, a barn, and a corral with 6 horses. Jake had built it himself 3 years back after the war ended, and he'd had enough of killing. Out here, a man could disappear into the work and the silence. "Stay inside," Jake said as he helped them down. "I need to see if we were followed." Nina caught his arm. "You saved our lives." "Why?" Jake met her eyes. They were dark and sharp, missing nothing. "Didn't seem right. 4 against 2. Most men would not care. Not most men." He pulled his arm free gently. "Get inside. There's bread and dried meat in the cupboard." He spent the next hour checking the perimeter, looking for tracks or signs of pursuit. The land stayed quiet except for the wind and the occasional cry of a hawk. When he finally returned to the cabin, he found the girls had cleaned themselves up and were sitting at his small table, eating carefully like they weren't sure how much they were allowed to take. "Eat your fill," Jake said, hanging his hat on the peg. "I got plenty." Emma spoke to her sister in Arapaho. Nina translated. "She says thank you. She says you have kind eyes." Jake felt his face heat up. He wasn't used to compliments, especially not from pretty young women. "Tell her she's welcome." He busied himself checking his rifles, making sure everything was loaded and ready. Nina watched him work, her expression thoughtful. "Those men?" she said quietly. "They were taking us to sell. We know what that means." Jake's jaw tightened. He'd heard stories about raiders who grabbed Indian women and sold them to brothels or worse. It made him sick to think about. "You're safe here," he said. "I give you my word." Words are easy, actions matter. But there was no accusation in her voice, just statement of fact. "Fair enough." Jake set down the rifle he'd been cleaning. "Where's your family?" "Your people?" Nina's face went carefully blank. "Our village was attacked 2 months ago. Soldiers came in the night. Our father died protecting us. Our mother told us to run." "And your mother?" "She stayed to help the others escape. We have not seen her since. Nina's voice was steady, but Jake saw the pain in her eyes. We have been moving ever since, trying to reach our uncle's band in the north. Then those men found us this morning. Emma said something, her voice breaking. Nina put an arm around her sister's shoulders and spoke softly in their language. The younger girl wiped her eyes and nodded. She's tired, Nina explained. It has been a long time since we slept without fear. Jake gestured to the back room. There's a bed in there. It's not much, but it's clean. You both should rest. Where will you sleep? Out here. I'll keep watch. Nina stood, helping her sister to her feet. At the doorway to the bedroom, she turned back. Jake Carter, you are a good man. There are not many left in this world. After they disappeared into the room, Jake sat in the gathering darkness, his rifle across his lap. He thought about the war, about all the things he'd seen and done. He'd come out here to escape that, to find some kind of peace. But peace was a luxury, he was learning. There was always someone who needed help, always some fight that needed fighting. He must have dozed off sometime after midnight, because he woke to the sound of horses. Multiple riders, moving fast. Jake was on his feet in seconds, peering through the window. In the moonlight, he counted 5 men approaching the cabin. The 4 from earlier, plus 1 more. Jake knocked on the bedroom door. Nina, Emma, wake up. We got company. Nina emerged immediately, knife in hand. Emma was right behind her, pale but determined. How many? Nina asked. 5. They must have tracked us. Jake checked his rifles, his mind racing. The cabin was defensible, but only for so long. Can you shoot? Yes. He handed her a rifle and a box of ammunition. Take the back window. Don't fire unless I do. We might be able to talk our way out of this. You believe that? No, but I gotta try. The riders pulled up 50 yards from the cabin. The one in front, a big man with a scarred face that Jake hadn't seen before, called out, We know you got those girls in there, mister. Send them out and we'll leave you be. Jake stepped onto the porch, rifle ready. Can't do that. Then you're going to die protecting a couple of Indian girls. That makes sense to you? Makes more sense than letting you take them. Jake's voice was steady. Right out now. This is your last chance, the scarred man laughed. We're 5 and you're 1, you do the math. I'm counting 3 of us, Jake said, and we're the ones behind cover. You do that math. For a moment, nobody moved. Then the scarred man reached for his gun, and the night exploded with gunfire. Jake dove behind the water trough as bullets tore through the porch railing. Wood splinters exploded around him, and he heard Nina's rifle crack from inside the cabin. One of the riders screamed and toppled from his saddle. 4 left. The attackers scattered, taking cover behind rocks in the barn. Jake risked a glance and saw the scarred man directing the others with hand signals. These weren't just drifters. They were organized, probably ex-military. A bullet punched through the water trough, and water began leaking out. Jake rolled to the side, coming up behind the porch corner. He fired twice, driving 2 men deeper behind the barn. Then he ducked back as return fire chewed up the wood where his head had been. Nina, you hit? He called. We are fine. I got 1. Good shooting. Keep him pinned on your side. The fight settled into a deadly rhythm. The attackers would try to advance. Jake and Nina would drive them back. But Jake knew this couldn't last. They had limited ammunition, and eventually these men would either rush the cabin or wait them out. Neither option ended well. Then Emma screamed. Jake spun around to see smoke curling from the back corner of the cabin. One of the men had circled around and set the place on fire. The dry wood caught fast, flames licking up the wall. We have to get out, Nina shouted. Jake's mind raced. If they ran, they'd be cut down in seconds. If they stayed, they'd burn. He needed a third option, and he needed it now. The horses, he said. We're going for the horses in the corral. That is 40 yards of open ground. You got a better idea? Nina met his eyes, then shook her head. We run together. Jake kicked open the front door. The scarred man and his crew were focused on the burning cabin, probably thinking they'd won. That gave Jake maybe 5 seconds of surprise. Now, he shouted. They burst from the cabin in a sprint. Jake fired from the hip, not aiming, just creating noise and chaos. Nina was right beside him, Emma clutching her hand. Bullets kicked up dirt around their feet. Jake felt something hot tear across his shoulder, but he kept running. The corral was right there, his horses spooked and circling. He yanked open the gate and grabbed his gelding's mane, swinging up bareback. Nina practically threw Emma onto another horse before mounting a third. Ride north, Jake yelled. Don't stop. They thundered out of the corral as the cabin collapsed behind them, sending sparks into the night sky. Jake heard the scarred man screaming orders. heard the pound of hooves as the pursuit began. The desert at night was treacherous, full of holes and rocks that could break a horse's leg, but Jake knew this land, had ridden it 100 times. He led them along a dry creek bed, then up a steep slope that made the horses strain and blow. Behind them, the pursuit was gaining. These men had fresh horses, not tired animals carrying double weight. Jake knew they had to find cover, somewhere they could make a stand. Then he saw it, a narrow canyon he'd explored months ago. The entrance was barely wide enough for a horse, and it opened into a small box canyon with high walls. It was a trap if they got cornered, but it was also defensible. "Follow me," he called, veering toward the canyon mouth. They squeezed through single file, the horses nervous about the tight space. The canyon opened up, maybe 50 yards across, with sheer walls on 3 sides. Jake jumped down and slapped his horse's rump, sending it to the back. Nina did the same with Emma. "Take the left wall," Jake told Nina. "I'll take the right. Emma, stay down behind those rocks." They barely got into position before the first rider came through the entrance. Jake shot him out of the saddle. The man fell hard, and his horse bolted back the way it came. The scarred man tried next, but he was smarter. He dismounted and came through on foot, using his horse as a shield. When the animal cleared the entrance, he dove to the side, firing as he moved. Jake felt a bullet burn past his ear. He returned fire, but the scarred man was already behind cover. This was going to be a real fight. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," the scarred man called out. "Just give us the girls." "Come and take them," Jake answered. "Already did some checking on you, Carter. You're that cowboy who killed 6 men in Dodge City last year. Got quite the reputation." Jake said nothing. That had been self-defense, but it had marked him. He'd come out here partly to escape that reputation. Thing is, the scarred man continued, "Killing 6 drunks in a saloon ain't the same as facing professionals. We were scouts for the cavalry. We know how to fight." As if to prove his point, 2 more men appeared at the canyon entrance, rifles ready. They'd flanked around, probably climbed the rocks on the outside. Now Jake and the girls were caught in a crossfire. Nina saw it too. She fired at the men above, but they had good cover. One of them shot back, and the bullet sparked off the rock inches from Nina's head. Jake made a decision. He couldn't protect them from multiple angles, but he could change the game. "Nina," he called. "On 3, we rush the entrance. It's our only chance. That is suicide. Staying here is suicide. At least this way we're moving." Jake checked his rifle. 4 rounds left. 1, 2, 3. They broke from cover together, firing as they ran. The scarred man's eyes went wide with surprise. Jake's charge caught them off guard. The scarred man fired wild, his bullet going high. Jake shot back, catching the man in the leg. He went down hard, cursing and clutching his thigh. Nina dropped one of the flankers with a perfect shot. The man tumbled from his perch on the rocks, hitting the ground with a sickening thud. The last attacker, seeing his partners down and the odds suddenly turned, threw down his rifle and raised his hands. "Don't shoot," he begged. "I'm done." Jake kept his rifle trained on him while Nina checked the scarred man. He was bleeding badly but alive. She kicked his gun away and stood over him. "You came for us," she said coldly. "Now you are the ones who are caught." The scarred man spat blood. "This ain't over. There's more of us. A whole network. You think killing us stops anything?" "I think you should be quiet before I change my mind about letting you bleed out," Jake said. He turned to the surrendering man. "Get your friend on his horse and ride south. If I ever see either of you again, I won't be this generous." The man nodded frantically and helped the scarred man up. They limped to their horses, mounted awkwardly, and disappeared into the darkness. Jake watched them go, knowing he might regret the mercy later. Nina was already checking on Emma, who had emerged from her hiding spot. The younger girl was shaking but unhurt. She spoke rapidly in Arapaho, and Nina hugged her tightly. She was very brave, Nina said to Jake. She did not cry or call out, even when the bullets were flying. "You both were brave." Jake reloaded his rifle, his hands steady despite the adrenaline still pumping through his veins. "But we can't stay here. There might be more of them, like he said. Where will we go? Your ranch is burned." "We have nothing." He'd been alone for 3 years, preferring it that way. But these girls had nobody, and he'd made himself responsible the moment he fired that first shot. "There's a town called Silver Creek, about 2 days' ride north. I know the sheriff there. We can figure things out once we're safe." They gathered the scattered horses and rode through the night, putting distance between themselves and the canyon. At dawn, they stopped by a stream to water the animals and rest. Emma fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted from the ordeal. Nina sat beside Jake, cleaning her rifle. You fight well for a rancher. Learned during the war. Tried to forget, but some things stick with you. I am glad they stuck. We would be dead without you. She paused. Or worse than dead. Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he said nothing. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun climb higher. Our mother, Nina said suddenly. I lied before. Not about the attack, that was true. But I know where she is. Jake turned to look at her. Why lie? Because I did not know if I could trust you. Many white men say kind words, but have dark hearts. She met his gaze. You have proven yourself. Our mother is hiding in the hills near Silver Creek. She is injured and cannot travel. That is why we were heading north, to bring help. Then we'll find her. Get her to a doctor? Nina shook her head. No white doctor will treat her. She is Arapaho. They will turn her away. Or worse, turn her over to the soldiers. The doctor in Silver Creek is a good man. I saved his daughter from a rattlesnake once. He owes me. You are certain? I'm certain I'll make him help, one way or another. Something in Nina's expression softened. You are not like other men, Jake Carter. You see people, not just their skin or their tribe. Before Jake could respond, Emma stirred and sat up. She pointed to the east, speaking urgently in Arapaho. Nina stood quickly scanning the horizon. What is it? Jake asked. She sees dust. Riders coming fast. Jake cursed under his breath. He'd hoped they'd have more time. He climbed onto a rock outcropping for a better view. Sure enough, a dust cloud was rising about 2 miles back. Multiple horses moving with purpose. Could be a patrol, he said. Or it could be more of those raiders. We cannot outrun them with tired horses. Jake looked around. They were in open country. Nowhere to hide. Nowhere to make a stand. Then he saw something that might work. A small ranch about a mile ahead, nestled in a valley. Smoke was rising from the chimney, meaning someone was home. We head for that ranch. Maybe they'll help us. And if they will not, then we keep riding and hope our horses last longer than theirs. They mounted up and rode hard for the ranch. As they got closer, Jake saw it was well maintained, with a large barn and multiple outbuildings. A woman was hanging laundry in the yard, and she looked up in surprise as they approached. Please, Jake called out. We need help. There are men chasing us. The woman's eyes took in the scene, Jake's bloody shoulder, the 2 Arapaho girls, the urgency in their faces. She made a decision fast. Barn, she said, pointing. Hide the horses in the back stalls. I'll handle whoever comes. They did as she said, getting the horses out of sight just as the pursuing riders came into view. Jake positioned himself where he could see through a crack in the barn wall. There were 6 of them, rough-looking men with rifles and hard expressions. The woman walked out to meet them, drying her hands on her apron like she had all the time in the world. Help you gentlemen with something? She asked. The lead rider, a thin man with a crooked nose, leaned forward in his saddle. We're tracking some fugitives. A white man and 2 Indian girls. You seen them pass through here? The woman shook her head. Haven't seen anyone all morning. Just me and my husband, and he's out checking the fence line. Mind if we look around? I do mind, actually. This is private property, and I don't take kindly to armed strangers wanting to search my home. Her voice was pleasant but firm. You got a warrant or some legal authority? The crooked-nosed man's jaw tightened. But those are dangerous criminals. Then I suggest you ride to Silver Creek and get the sheriff involved. That's the proper way to handle things. She crossed her arms. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. The riders exchanged glances. They clearly wanted to push harder, but the woman's confidence gave them pause. Finally, the leader nodded curtly and turned his horse. We'll be back, he said. You do that. With proper authority next time. They rode off, though not in the direction of Silver Creek. The woman waited until they were out of sight before walking to the barn. Jake stepped out, his respect for this stranger growing by the minute. Thank you, he said. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. I saw what you did for those girls, how you were protecting them. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. She looked at Nina and Emma. I'm Claire. My husband will be back soon. You're welcome to stay until it's safe to move on. But Nina was staring past Claire, her eyes wide with disbelief. She said something in Arapaho, her voice trembling. Emma looked where her sister was pointing and gasped. A woman was walking toward them from the back of the ranch house. She was Arapaho, probably in her 40s, with long gray-streaked hair and a pronounced limp. Her left arm was in a sling. Mama, Emma whispered, then ran forward. Nina stood frozen, tears streaming down her face. How? The older woman embraced Emma, then held out her good arm to Nina. The reunion was powerful, full of Arapaho words Jake couldn't understand, but whose meaning was clear in every sob and touch. Claire stood beside Jake, smiling. "That's Running Deer. She showed up at our door 3 weeks ago, half dead from infection and exhaustion. My husband and I nursed her back to health." "She's their mother," Jake said, understanding dawning. That's why they were heading to Silver Creek. "They didn't know we'd found her. We tried to get word out to the Arapaho camps, but it's dangerous these days. Too many patrols, too many people who hate Indians just for existing." Claire's expression hardened. "My husband and I don't hold with that kind of thinking." Running Deer finally pulled away from her daughters and approached Jake. She studied his face for a long moment, then spoke in careful English. "My daughters tell me you saved their lives, that you fought for them when you could have looked away. Anyone decent would have done the same." "No, not anyone." Running Deer's eyes were intense, weighing him. "Claire tells me you are a good man, alone in this world. No wife, no family." Jake felt heat creep up his neck. "That's true enough. I have a request, an unusual one." Running Deer glanced at her daughters, and then back to Jake. "Take Nina as your wife." The words hit Jake like a physical blow. Nina looked equally shocked, her eyes going wide. Emma covered her mouth, but there was a smile behind her hand. "Mama, no," Nina protested in English. "You cannot ask this." "I can, and I do." Running Deer's voice was gentle but unyielding. "You are 20 summers old. In our tribe, you would have been married years ago. But the war, the attacks, the running, all of this has prevented it. Now I have seen the man who saved you, who fought for you, who risked everything when he owed you nothing. This is not a man who comes along often." Jake found his voice. "Ma'am, I appreciate the honor, but Nina barely knows me, and I'm not the marrying kind." "Why not?" Running Deer asked. "You are lonely. I see it in your eyes. Nina is strong, brave, intelligent. She would make a good wife, and you would protect her, keep her safe in this dangerous world. There has to be another way," Jake said, though part of him was already imagining it. Nina in his cabin, her laughter filling the empty spaces. Nina stepped forward. "I will do it." Everyone turned to stare at her. "You will?" Jake and Running Deer said at the same time. "Not because I am told to, Mama, but because I choose to." Nina looked at Jake with those sharp, dark eyes. "You are a good man, Jake Carter. I have seen your heart. If you will have me, I will stand beside you." Jake's mind raced. This was crazy. They'd known each other less than 2 days. But in those 2 days they had fought side by side, trusted each other with their lives. He'd seen her courage, her loyalty, her strength, and when he looked at her he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. "I need to know one thing," he said. "Is this what you really want, or is this just you trying to make your mother happy?" Nina smiled, and it transformed her face. "I want this. I want you." "If you want me." Jake took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Then he held out his hand. "Then I guess we're getting married." Nina took his hand, her grip firm and sure. Running Deer began to cry, but they were tears of joy. Emma was openly weeping and smiling at the same time. Claire clapped her hands together. "Well then," Claire said, "looks like we have a wedding to plan."